Let's go back to our top story now. US President Donald Trump saying he's asked his Secretary of State to closely study the land reform process in South Africa. Well, Trump was tweeting in response to a Fox News report which claimed the South African government is actively seizing white-owned farms. Well, Fox anchor Tucker Carlson described President Cyril Ramaphosa's government as racist. On the line, we have international relations expert Brooks Spector. Brooks, very good morning to you. What do you make of this tweet from Trump?
Well, good morning. I was actually sound asleep when all this happened. Now I'm more than a little astounded. I don't usually expect my two worlds to come colliding quite this closely. But Donald Trump obviously has gotten a bee in his bonnet about South Africa based on, as you say, the Tucker Carlson comments and a recent article by Marion Tupe, who is a researcher for a libertarian political viewed think tank in Washington, the Cato Institute. And Tupe is an ex-South African, so it adds a little more flavor to the story. I'm almost speechless over the number of misstated facts or non-facts or made-up facts that have been crammed together in such a small story. There are, he's built on this story that has been put about that there's an active campaign to kill off the white farmers. He's built on the story that there has been an active campaign to seize all the land starting now, and that the government is effectively behind all this.
Well,
now,
Brooks, I suppose the question would be, why would he care? I mean, from the time he's come into office, he's already said he really has no interest in what's going on in Africa. Why would he care anyway about what is happening here? Given that yes, he's completely misrepresented, like you say, thrown in some very non-factual stuff in there. Why would Donald Trump care?
I'm not sure Donald Trump personally cares much at all, but I think he is now so thoroughly annoyed and angry and ready to lash out because of the way he's being chivied about in the United States politically, with the sentencing of not just his former campaign manager, but also his close personal friend and ex-close personal friend and lawyer, Michael Cohen, that anything that comes his way late into the evening is now fair game. But there is a slight little bit of an issue here to actually be concerned about, and that is South Africa's participation in AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. It does have a clause in there which talks to the nature of law and property rights, and if for some reason he were to personally determine, or if even worse, his representatives were to ascertain that those were being violated in a mass kind of way, it would be possible to argue for termination of AGOA access. The whole thing seems like an inconceivable set of circumstances, but in the last 18 months of watching Donald Trump, I guess we've learned to accept the fact that inconceivable is just something that hasn't happened yet.
Brooks, how do you expect South Africa to react to this?
Well, they have two choices, really. One, they can react angrily, and the other one is they can just ignore it as if it's yet another late night tweet storm from Donald Trump. I mean, I urge them to think of the second one, but to be prepared with sufficient facts so that when the question actually is asked of the government, presumably by the embassy in some way, that they can put the story to rest. The first way, of course, is the angry screams and hollers of anguished people in government and in the public, and I think that would be counterproductive because that just gets you into a tweet storm with Donald Trump. That's not going to be a winning combination for anybody.
Yeah, let's just go back to, what he was watching and what he was reacting to and what Tucker Carlson was saying. on Fox News. I mean, it's also quite unbelievable that, you know, as a news anchor would take that sort of attack or that angle on a story without actually probably having investigated himself. Who Tucker Carlson? How much weight does he carry? Who's the audience? Who does he appeal to? What does he count for?
If you're a right-wing acolyte of Donald Trump, Fox News and Tucker Carlson are like holy writ. If you're anybody else, it's Tucker Carlson. Well, all right. Yet more information that's been made up or mangled. I can't. You know, it's almost as if a searchlight randomly seeks out something to pick a fight with, and this morning is South Africa's turn. It's that bizarre.
Now, he's asked Mike Pompeo to actually study the land expropriation without compensation issue and farm killings, as he says, in South Africa. I mean, do you expect that such a thing will actually happen? And if it does happen, what do you expect to come out of that study, given that we're still in the process here of figuring out how we're going to do all of this?
Sure. I mean, what Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, is unlikely to get on an airplane to come out here and look at expropriation without compensation issues or anything else. I mean, that's just not the way things are done in normal administrations. But it is quite reasonable to expect that there will be not necessarily a demand, but certainly a very strongly worded telegram from Washington to the embassy in Pretoria to say, go check this out and report back to us with full data. Mm-hmm. And then the chargé d'affaires, because there is no ambassador here yet, will have her staff actively building up this information base. Now, as a point of clarification, it is absolutely clear that the embassy staff is following this issue because it is an important one in this country, and it's one of the major dynamics of the political process as it's going forward here. The South African president speaks to it, other political parties speak to it, and there are constant stories in newspapers and online. But the problem is this underlying metaphor, whatever you want to call it, of this campaign against white farmers and the sub rosa stealing of their land that activates Mr. Tupi in Washington and thereby Tucker Carlson, because all of these alt-right people, all of these alternative right-wing stroke libertarian news sources and scholars, they do talk to each other and they do read each other's stuff. So that gives Tupi's article in the Cato Institute's publication some legs, because Tucker Carlson undoubtedly saw it, as well as having, I believe, AfriForum sent a delegation to the United States a couple of months back, too.
Yeah, we are trying to get a hold of them for some reaction to this tweet as well. It'll be interesting, but we can't actually get through to anyone at this point. Phones seem to be on voicemail.
Their trip in the U.S.
Yeah, well, Brooks, I just want to find out from you also. I mean, you know, you did speak about how South Africa could or should react. Like you say, they could either react angrily or they could choose to ignore what Donald Trump has to say. But do you see this, whatever happens, either way, causing some kind of strained relations between Washington and Pretoria? Do you see that this is sort of going to throw a spoke in the wheels there to any sort of progress we might have made or been making in terms of building relations there?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it's obviously not going to be helpful. It's never helpful when country A accuses country B of a racialized economic campaign on the basis of, you know, just a gossamer tissue effect. It's never helpful when one country just has its president automatically accusing another country's people and government of doing despicable things. We're in for some rocky times, and as a sort of a humorous add-on, I guess this means Melania Trump won't be visiting South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, that was my next question, is that she's due to visit here to be educated about, you know, what is happening on the continent, what is happening with children and all of that. Do you think that she's actually going to make this trip now? And or if she does, what kind of reception will she probably get?
Well, she'll come to Africa, but I suspect that on the basis of this, she'll probably go to some other southern African country, place like Zambia or Botswana. Botswana is often a favorite because it has all the virtues of a good trip as well as stable country, decent government, and so forth. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. If in the planning of her trip, it means she does come to South Africa, all right, there's a good bit there. This would be an opportune way to show that these things, as Mr. Tupe and Tucker Carlson and now Donald Trump have portrayed them, aren't happening.
Yeah.
And that in itself might be a good thing.
Or maybe we could educate her as well on what is happening with our land reform process as well, and that she can take the message back home. But lastly, Brooks, very quickly, I mean, do you expect this to snowball, or do you expect it to die down after a couple of days until Trump tweets something else about someone else?
Well, it's the whip hand is entirely in Donald Trump's hands at this point. If he decides that this is something he really wants to ride, that if his base has, as we call it, with his diehard supporters, if they rally to this story, it'll continue. If something else in this Russia scandal business occupies his attention further, some other place, it'll die down. If somebody here responds in kind, then it will continue. I mean, it's up to somebody in the room to be an adult.
Okay, well, let's see what happens and what happens over the next couple of days. Thanks very much, Brooks Spector there, international relations expert.